Hello and welcome to the Hope Recovery Podcast. I'm your host, Greg Schmalhofer, and this is episode number 76 and the podcast episode for June. The episode today will focus on the key principle of the recovery community, and that is on the idea of helping others, giving back, and of service to others. The devotional message for today is called Who Will You Help Today? And it is based on the story from John chapter 9, verses 1 through 11, where Jesus heals a man who was blind from birth. There are many lessons and principles from these passages, but I will present 4 principles with the focus of helping others. The recovery community and the various 12-step fellowships all have a strong focus on helping others, giving back, and doing service work, all important ways to grow in recovery. But it is also interesting how often AA and NA connect helping others with a spiritual component, with being connected to God in some way as your higher power. As you listen to these NA and AA quotes regarding helping others, consider for yourself just how much of a priority do you have for helping others in the struggle. A quote from NA, page 51, from the chapter How It Works, speaks about helping others and the spiritual connection when it says, learning to help others is a benefit of the Narcotics Anonymous program. Remarkably, working the 12 steps guides us from humiliation and despair to acting as instruments of our higher power. We are given the ability to help a fellow addict when no one else can. We see it happening among us every day. Another quote from NA, page 58, speaks of the great importance of helping others when it says, we recognize our spiritual growth when we are able to reach out and help others. We help others when we participate in service work and try to carry the message of recovery to the addict who still suffers. We learn that we keep what we have only by giving it away. And certainly, the responsibility statement of AA clearly declares just how important it is to help others in the struggle of alcohol and drug addiction as well, when it states, I am responsible when anyone, anywhere reaches out for help. I want the hand of AA always to be there, and for that, I am responsible. And lastly, a quote from AA, page 58, perhaps the one great quote that connects the importance of help from God as the most important help of all, when it says, remember that we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, powerful. Without help, it is too much for us. But there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. Helping others is a key part of recovery. It is clear that helping others to also be successful in recovery is a core principle of the 12-step fellowships, and helping others is a key biblical principle as well. The passage today is from John chapter 9, verses 1 through 11, which is the story of Jesus healing a man born blind. John chapter 9, verses 1 through 11 goes like this. As he passed by, he saw a man blind from birth. And his disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus answered, it was not that this man sinned or his parents, but that the works of God might be displayed in him. We must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. Having said these things, he spit on the ground and made mud with his saliva. Then he anointed the man's eyes with the mud and said to him, go wash in the pool of Siloam, which means sent. So he went and washed and came back seeing. The neighbors and those who had seen him before as a beggar were saying, "Is this not the man who used to sit and beg?" Some said, "It is he." Others said, "No, but he is like him." He kept saying, "I am the man." So they said to him, "Then how were your eyes opened?" He answered, "The man called Jesus made mud and anointed my eyes and said to me, 'Go to Siloam and wash.' So I went and washed and received my sight." So the first point I would like to make is, first is, what would Jesus do? In these verses 1 through 3, it goes like this: as he passed by, he saw a man blind from birth. And his disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" Jesus answered, "It was not that this man sinned or his parents, but that the works of God might be displayed in him." These first few verses bring out an interesting contrast in how the disciples responded and how Jesus responded. They all saw the same thing, a man blind from birth. But the disciples asked, basically, how did this happen? Or even, who is at fault that this man is now blind? Or perhaps simply, why? But Jesus seemed to only see a man with a great need and had compassion on him and simply said, "It is so that the works of God might be displayed in him." In a sense, for this man, it was no one's fault. It was not because of his parents, and it was not a result of his own actions. Sometimes bad things happen. We need to be mindful that we live in a fallen world. We live in a fallen world because of sin, and sometimes bad things happen. And sometimes, for many different reasons, people end up in alcohol and drug addiction. Jesus saw a person in need and responded with compassion. He did not try to determine who was at fault, but rather he responded with compassion. For you today, remember to consider, what would Jesus do? Remember that Jesus would respond with compassion. As you see lost and hurting people still in the struggle of addiction or any struggle of life, consider, what would Jesus do? And respond with compassion so that the works of God might be displayed in him. And then second, God wants you to help others. Verses 4 and 5, "We must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world." Here Jesus quite directly gives us instruction to get to work. Jesus says, "We must work the works of him who sent me while it is day." Or in other words, we must do what God wants us to do. And certainly that includes to share the wonderful message that Jesus is the light of the world. But it is also to get to work and help people. As we see people in need, we are to respond with compassion, and we are to reach out and help others as we are able. As Christians, we know the truth that Jesus is the light of the world. We are to share this truth with others as Jesus suggested for his disciples. We are to work the works of him who sent me, Jesus, into the world. Perhaps said another way, we are to help others and point them to God. We are to share this truth to help others be successful in recovery. And we are to share this truth to point others to the loving God of the Bible. As the NA quote earlier says regarding helping others, we are given the ability to help a fellow addict when no one else can. For you today, remember that God wants you to help others. God wants you to get to work and help others in recovery and even in any struggle of life. And as you help others, you will also be able to share the wonderful message that Jesus is the light of the world. What a wonderful message to share for true help and hope as well. And then third, trust God and follow God's directions. Verses 6 to 7, having said these things, he spit on the ground and made mud with his saliva. Then he anointed the man's eyes with the mud. And he said to him, go wash in the pool of Siloam, which means sent. So he went and washed and came back seeing. The instructions Jesus gave for this blind man did not make sense. How could mud on the eyes help his blindness? But the blind man trusted God and followed his directions, and he was healed. There are many times you pray for God's help in your recovery, but you do not like the answer, or you do not see how it could help, or you feel it does not seem to make sense, or it does not match what you think is best. In recovery and in life, you are to trust God and follow God's direction. Likely you have tried your own way of recovery many times. Now try, in a sense, to do what this blind man did. Trust God and follow God's direction. For you today, pray for God's guidance and direction in your recovery and in life, and then trust God and follow God's direction. Yes, trust God and follow God's direction even when it does not seem to make sense. Even when you do not understand, you are to trust God and do whatever is necessary to be successful in recovery. And then fourth, tell others what God has done. Verses 8 through 11. The neighbors and those who had seen him before as a beggar were saying, is this not the man who used to sit and beg? Some said, it is he. Others said, no, but he is like him. He kept saying, I am the man. So they said to him, then how were your eyes opened? He answered, the man called Jesus made mud and anointed my eyes and said to me, go to Siloam and wash. So I went and washed and received my sight. This man was so grateful for what God had done in his life. He was eager to tell others what God had done. He remembered what his life was like before as a beggar. The joy of his healing from such a terrible disease, he could not help but tell others what God had done in his life. This reminds me of the AA quote from page 191 that says, that sentence, the Lord has been so wonderful to me, curing me of this terrible disease, that I just want to keep telling people about it, has been sort of a golden text for the AA program and for me. This man told others, his neighbors and those who had seen him before as a beggar, they knew him from before as the blind man and the beggar. Do you remember what you were like before when you were in your addiction? Are you still grateful that you just want to tell others what God has done? And for you, if you are still struggling in your addiction, please know that just like this blind man, you can trust God to help you so that one day you can say, I am the man. For you today, just like this blind man, be grateful for what God has done in your life, healing you of this terrible disease. Be grateful and tell others what God has done for you, and share with others that they can trust God too. And God will help them to be successful in recovery and even to a brand new life as well. In closing, from this passage today, remember, first, consider what would Jesus do? Respond with compassion so that the works of God might be displayed in him. And second, remember that God wants you to help others. Yes, God wants you to get to work and help others. And then third, remember to trust God and follow God's direction. You are to trust God and do whatever is necessary to be successful in recovery. And fourth, remember to tell others what God has done. Be grateful for what God has done in your life, healing you of this terrible disease. And so let me ask you, who will you help today? That is what I have for you today. Thank you very much for joining me on the Hope Recovery Podcast. And remember, there is always hope with God. Take care, and God bless you all. That concludes the podcast episode for today. If I may, let me remind you, for more faith-based recovery resources for your recovery house or church or ministry, please see the website at www.hoperecovery.us. And if there is any way I can help you or your recovery group, please feel free to email me at hoperecoveryus@gmail.com, and I would be happy to talk with you further. And again, take care, and God bless you all.